This is the daily reflection for the online Lenten calendar for Chorley and Leyland Methodists. And today's passage is from the second chapter of Genesis and the first 3 verses. Thus the heavens and the earth and everything in them were completed. On the 6th day God brought to an end all the work that he had been doing. And on the 7th day, having finished all his work, God blessed the day and made it holy, because it was the day he finished all of his work of creation. For me, that's one of the most beautiful passages in the whole of Scripture. Those verses tell of how God rested and took time to reflect on everything that he had made, and he came to the conclusion that what he had made was very good. These verses seem to me like a guiding light to us to take time to rest and reflect. Perhaps there's no better time to do that than during these days of Lent. Almost 40 years ago, I remember an American priest friend of mine telling me how one of his parishioners approached him as Lent was getting near. She sought his advice as to what extra things she ought to be taking on as Lent approached. She did so much in the church, but her life so often seemed to be full of oughts and shoulds and musts, and she had a harried and worried look in all her well-doing. My friend thought for a moment before answering her question, and then he asked her what she most enjoyed doing of all the things that she did in church. Without a moment's hesitation, she said, singing in the choir. And my friend said to her, this Lent, lay aside all those other jobs and enjoy the music and the singing and the faith that they tell about. He knew that for her to make a good Lent, Phyllis needed a good rest. On one of the further training courses that I attended during my active ministry, one of the leaders shared with us what he called diary development. He was speaking to just a group of fellow ministers, but for any of us, if our lives are wired in a way that we are driven by God's demands before we are drawn by God's love, then maybe what he described as diary development could be a Lenten exercise for us. He told us that many ministers, many people, cram their diary with work, and all that is left for the rest of life is what he called the fag ends. If there isn't enough time to sleep properly, if there's no time for leisure and hobbies, not enough attention to a healthy diet or unrushed eating times, if opportunities are not made to spend quality time with family and friends, or we don't make time for proper exercise, then our lives will become ragged, unfocused, unbalanced, unhealthy, and out of kilter. All these things are needed for a fully effective life and are vital in nourishing the rich, still centre of lives, which God passionately wants for us, because he wants the best for us and the best of us. I want to end with 2 quotations, one from the Anglican theologian and former Dean of Trinity College, Cambridge, H.A. Williams, and the second from St. Augustine. Starkly, and yet perceptively, Harry Williams said this: Christ, our Creator, redeems us first by his wrath. The wrath of God is his refusal to allow us to rest until we have become fully what we are, the person God meant us to be. And 1600 years earlier, St. Augustine wrote this: Thou hast made us for thyself, O Lord, and our hearts are restless until they find their rest in thee. May God give us all the grace to make a good Lent, even as we continue through these strangest of times.